we think about lecturing to lecture or not to lecture, I'm just saying if we can envision a low lecture environment, maybe not no lecture, but a low lecture environment.
Which to me is like 15 minutes.
Mini lectures or lecturettes.
To address Nancy's point, we now have gone from a BS, MS to Masters only, so the students coming into the day program in Gainesville may be different as well. And that they, maybe their expectations when they were coming through the BSMS program is that, or traditionally they were in a classroom experience face to face and that's how they learn. But now, our other cohorts or the students are, I don't know, are we seeing the same mix in the Gainesville Day program?
I don't know if this is just not to compare to other schools, but my nephew just started UGA and my son was having a conversation with him last week and he said, Mom, they don't take attendance at any of Jacob's classes. He doesn't have to be there. They tell them that they're supposed to know at the test. He doesn't have to go. They don't even talk when they get there. They just do stuff. And I was like, well, son, they're doing lab stuff versus lecture. But, you know, here's a traditional brick and mortar. You think UGA, he's in his first semester as a freshman, and it's essentially hybrid. It's get your lectures online and come to class for the testing.
Well, medical schools are moving towards hybridized classes. They're not advertising themselves as a hybrid medical school, but some classes are.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure
So,
what
yeah,
before
hold on.
we,
Yeah.
it's a point that was made a long time ago, and we've gone way past it, but I think it's worth talking.
Would you speak up for the,
Oh, yeah,
I
it's,
think we need to turn the camera.
Yeah.
actually, I want to play off a little something Mary was talking about with regards to the tension and the anxiety associated with it. Most of the research would suggest that anxiety is both a good and a bad thing. And we shouldn't arrange instructional activities that are totally devoid of a little bit of anxiety. Because that puts a little bit of a point, a little bit of push in the class where you can't get it if you don't engineer it. But when we overdo it, it shuts down. People shut down, and then you do damage to learning by overdoing it. And so it's a real fine balance of how you play it, and you have to really be. That's where it becomes an expertise of teaching, where you really have to kind of play it just right on the cusp of really kind of pushing people, but still not pushing them over and shutting learning down.
I think there's a value to teaching them about adult learning.
So anyway, I just wanted to.
But does hybrid get to be that your lectures get to feel lavish? Because I think I'm struggling with that concept with how do I take truly book content and the lecture is okay. I always think lecture, book, and lab, apply it. So if the lecture, so if I have the lecture and you have contents that are with 30 people and I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how do I make it so individual and it's not so loud and I can control the flow? Like, I feel it'll run away, and then trying to get them through the points that I want them to get from the lecture. It's like saying I could look at a PowerPoint and read it and I would know what it meant. And I know I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that with anatomy. I can't do that with kinesiology. So if that's with a hybrid concept, I guess I'm struggling with how to make the flow into, let's stop, put the book away, and get into it.
So, I don't know if it helps, but I don't think of lecture as lecture. I think of lecture as meaning I've got a bunch of students in the room, and I think of lab as I have fewer students in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
But
That's really the way.
For the content-heavy courses.
Well, but Foundations is a content-heavy course. Yes, it is.
But it's a different
Process content.
It's, yeah, but you
Process
focus a
content, a lot
lot
of
more
them.
on the process than.
There's a lot of content there. But
I think
anyway,
there
keep
is,
going.
there
Well, I think of like the clinical conditions or kines or anatomy, like somehow, some way they have to push those things through, and there's
Yes.
more difficult content.
Yes.
So 1 through 4 in the kines book, that all the biomechanical stuff, you have to probably walk them through that stuff because
Yeah.
it's complicated.
Right.
The hip and the two joint muscles, complicated, you know what I mean?
Well, I taught neuro in a hybrid model for the weekend students, and well, one that helped, I audio taped all my lectures.
Yeah.
And then basically I took the first 45 minutes of my lecture time, and I said, questions?
That's
What
I'm doing,
questions do
624.
you have? And I never opened the PowerPoint.
Right, that's what I'm
That
doing.
there was no PowerPoints.
But you're
in
still
the-
lecturing.
Right, and they said, I don't understand the dorsal column medial lemniscus. All right, let's talk about it. Let's turn to page XXX. So we still went back to the book, you know what I mean, during that 45 minutes. But I did not do the ad nauseum PowerPoint. They could do that in the car on the way to work.
I guess what I'm saying is you're still delivering the content
Yes,
via
Yes.
the lectures are recorded.
Yeah, for
and
neuro, like,
whatever.
I mean, that was heavy stuff.
Like, to me, I don't know that there's a way around that. You can shift it out of the classroom and onto the student,
Right.
but
Sure, I think there's times when you need to explain stuff, but I also think that there's a lot of literature, a lot of adult learning theory that says people cannot attend to that kind of stuff for more than 15 minutes.
Right.
So to me, lecture's fine, you just gotta do it in 15-minute modules, and that really lends itself to the online stuff. And then what Mary was doing was finding their questions and doing mini
Focused,
lectures.
yeah.
Very focused,
On
topical
what they
kinds of
needed.
things.
She was
What they
backfilling.
needed.
Rather than all of it.
She was doing the backfill,
Yes.
which is.
Well, and I think your quiz thing that you do, Kay, is a perfect way of doing that. You know, I that's what I did for Canese, content heavy. You know, they have their lecture piece, they know they're responsible for all the book reading and doing that. They take the quizzes and they go, oh my gosh, I got a 25, help me. You know, so we say, all right, let's see who had problems with that. And then it's a way to go in and say, I need to reinforce this, this, and this
Right.
in class
So it's the
lecture.
back-
Focus is your lecture time.
Yeah.
So are we, it just seems to me that in this conversation, there's, for me, I'm confused about, are we talking about hybrid delivery or are we talking about context-based teaching and or both? Because some of it is coming from how do we hybridize, of course, some of the questions are maybe about that, and some of that I think is a direct application of how do you best do context-based teaching, and some of the examples that are coming up in terms of this is how it's worked well in my course, some of the exemplars.
Or higher level, higher
Level
level
thinking.
learning.
Yeah.
One of the things that I worked on very hard with 624 was upgrading, you know, the taxonomy going. I realized that the objectives were really low. And so then once I did that, I had to think about, well, how is that really gonna happen? They're gonna synthesize something. And how am I really gonna have them synthesized? So I'm trying, like, tomorrow, okay, it's not that hard stuff. I put the PowerPoints in my phone, but it's about the history of mental health OT. But okay, I have a lecture. You're gonna be set up into work groups, and I've got topics that are related to that history, or what's going on now. They're gonna be researching, what has the OTA got on now? You know, what is the consumer advocacy groups? Who's out there? You know, to make it relevant and alive. I don't know if it's gonna work well, but I'm willing to try it to see if it's better than standing up there and delivering content.
And Wendy, I think what we're saying is,
Feedback.
it's, you know, I think in the weekend program, we're doing something right, just looking at their, you know, their test scores and their performance. You know, it's kind of like there's some secret in that sauce, what is it? And I think that we treat a lot of our time as like pure lab with little points of reinforcing things in the lecture, but the lecture-y stuff has pretty much been their responsibility. And it's seeming to work, and it's putting out good problem-solving clinicians so far.
And to answer your question, I don't know, Wendy, I mean, to me, we're dealing with two, I mean, context-based, appreciating the fact that people need to learn in context is a philosophical stance and an understanding of how people learn. How you then operationalize that across different curriculums is, and sure, are they related? Yeah, but I don't know that it's, I mean,
There's no rules.
well, you get into a discussion of how real is real. I mean, you know, it's like, it's a YouTube is real, is going to see the kid in daycare is the same as seeing the really sick kid, is the same to treating the kid, well, it's all a continuum. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a discussion, I don't know, John and I have been engaged in for 20-odd years now. I don't know that there's an easy answer to it. All I'm pretty sure of is that the stuff that's more real is more likely to have real meaning, and people are gonna be able to activate that knowledge in practice. That is my stance. That's it. But,
The realer, the better.
realer the better, and that's true whether it's occupation as therapy or whether it's teaching and learning. The
We
realer
always
the
tell,
better.
Mary and I always tell the story about taking the students out where they learn to do the totally categorization assessment, which is the Forrest Knight experience, because of sort, remember? And how they think, oh, these people, you know, we go out to peer support, wow, they interview, these people are really high functioning, what are they doing here? And then they do the Topia, and it's like this light bulb goes off, unbelievable, like this person could even do the first sort of colors or forks together. And they're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So what are some, since we're sort of moving on to the exemplars, since it looks like.
Looks like we need to move on
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
exemplar.
did you want to say something now? or-
No,
Oh.
like, what I wanted to say is, thank you, ladies, can we move on to the
Yes.
exemplars?
So, do you want to do that, or we'll just move forward? 'Cause
You can move forward,
We
that's
wanted
fine.
to bring forward, some of the exemplars of practice, and this list, I think, was generated probably from Marion Barb, is my guess, which is to continue the sharing of what is working well, and what kinds of practices do you have in your own courses, so, Robin and Kay, Robin, do you wanna talk about this media
Well,
project?
like what you were, I just thought it was beautiful what happened with Justin doing the bowl and then adapting the crochet needle.
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah.
talk about,
Just how the group kind of adopted the client,
Yeah.
or wanted to, anyway.
I went ahead and brought in actually one of my UV clients who also has RA, psoriatic arthritis and fibromyalgia into the weekend class. And they were, she was there to tell her story and how the art, you know, how her arthritis and fibromyalgia affects all of her occupation.
and this is occupational media at
Yes,
that point,
at
which is
that
now
point,
that
it's
capstone
occupational
practice
media.
course.
And what they were supposed to do from that was an intervention plan for her. So they were interviewing her and they were going to, you know, come up with what they thought the intervention plan should look like for her. And so, and she also is a master crocheter that she learned from the Austin Prestridge at Gateway. And so she taught them also to crochet at the same time when she was in class. And she talks about it all the time, like she felt like, and Charles knows her well too, that she just felt like she got so much, I mean, she talks to them about when you don't work and your identity. I mean, so many of the OT concepts she shared beautifully. And I could never say it the way that she said it. Well, anyway, so the class kind of adopted her, but as Mary said, they just loved her. And they got cards, of course, to thank her and all sign it. But then, Justin, who was in the class and is a woodworker, he went ahead and turned this gorgeous bowl, wooden bowl, with a notch, a hole in it for the yarn, put in the yarn, and it would go through the hole.
Oh,
So
wow.
she didn't have to hold it when she was doing
Oh,
the
wonderful.
crocheting. And that meant just, I mean, the world to her, but just to feel very, very useful in terms of teaching. And she's hopefully coming back, Colleen will hopefully have her back, and have her crocheting. The other thing that happened was that Charles, she came to the CPL, and Charles did this beautiful job of building up the crochet hooks and lengthening it for her, because she was having a lot of problems holding for a period of time, and she really uses it too as a coping strategy for stress, and now she's selling, she's making money. So she's crocheting a lot, or knitting a lot, and Charles did this, you know, beautiful job of extending it, well, then we ran out of material. So she on her own went online, started looking up like built up handles, and found that people had used Fimo or Sculpey, you know, with the stuff you bake, like it's like, you know, clay, and actually built up the handles using that. And so the class, as a service learning project, they went ahead and made about, there were like 21 people in the class, we had 21 of the crochet hooks now with built up handles. And they donated some of them to Gateway and the other ones to the CPL. So there were multiple ways that she and the class ended up, you know, being and working together.
You know, the thing that I always think about, I always liken this, and I don't do this practice, so I don't know why I use this as a metaphor, but my understanding of floor time kind of techniques is that you have a therapy idea in mind, but you just sort of follow the kid around and to me, that's what this kind of teaching is like, is you have a learning idea in mind. It's like floor time with adults, like you have an idea in mind, and then you bring in something that's fertile, and they got hooked. That's a meaning, that's
So
a
you're
great
using the
example of
occupational
meaning.
interests of your client.
Exactly, and I would say the last, well, the kind of the continuation of this story is that now she's come to me at the shelter, and she's been coming for 3 years. I mean, she still comes. And she came to me recently and said, you know, I've been thinking about these new people in group, you know, because we'll get new people who come in, like, you know, and they're still crying. And she says, have you ever thought about, you know, like people like me tell our stories of where we came from?
Oh, wow.
Like I did in your class. Like this is how far we've come. It's possible. You know, to tell you.
Give them a future to be in.
Give them a future. You know, a trajectory out. And if you hang in here. So now, and also she's helping us, and we're hoping we're going to be able to go to the. Jennifer found this wonderful organization, Thistle Farms, that sells Bath and Body Works for, and all the women have been abused who make the stuff, and they do a workshop, a 2-day workshop on training other organizations to do it, and Anne wants to head that up, so we're hoping that we're gonna go. Hopefully Nancy.
One of the other things I want to point out is the synergy that Robin has managed to build over time between her research, her teaching, and her clinical practice, because this is also the areas that your thesis group is working on. It's also something where she brings a client in for teaching. It's also something that builds it out there, and it also feeds her heart. So that's a good example of community practices communities of practice working in synergy. Thanks. Hey, I was thinking about all the senior center stuff that you've done over the years. I didn't know which one you wanted to share, but what do you think is some of the cool things you've been able to do in whichever class you want to pick? You've done a lot.
One of the things that's neat is the students, the clients are, the same clients are still there. And so their community, they might have been their community partner, they might have seen them in Denise, and then they'd see them again as an older adult. So to reestablish those connections from the older adult to even see how they've changed their posture and, you know, use those aspects. And when we take them in the older adult class, we taught them different assessments. We've taught them cognitive assessments, and we've taught them balance assessments, and taught them to look at the bigger picture and not get so focused on the details and everything. And so then that provides a really rich opportunity to put all of those things together when the seniors volunteer for us, but also to go with the flow, and if they say no or they can't do any of those, what to do, and it just.
What is the assignment? What is the actually that happens?
Well, on that particular one, they go in and they do a cognitive screening, and the way that we couch it with the seniors is, and with the students, is that we ask the seniors to help school the students, and so they're learning to do, because it's inappropriate, I feel, for them to be giving them a cognitive assessment, you know, and make any interpretation or anything at that point. So they give the cognitive assessment, but the seniors are asked to give them feedback in terms of, you know, if something wasn't clear, or, you know, to sort of be a way to critique with that, and have a little dialogue, and sort of let them sort of run that part of the show. And then we do some kind of balance test and falls work, and usually we also bring back through the vitals that they would have done in Kines as well. This last time when we went, there was somebody one day there that was doing the vitals for something else, so we didn't do it, but normally, so it's a way to sort of revisit around. One of the difficulties, though, is that it's me, and I usually go in 2 groups instead of the 3 labs, and so, you know, 15 students in 2 different rooms, maybe 3 different rooms, and so, like, one of my horror stories that I share is that not paying attention to all the context of things. A woman had open heart surgery and like 3 weeks before, and she was there at the senior center, and I came up knowing this woman from previous times, and noticed that she was different, and I asked what was going on. She said, "Oh, I just had open heart surgery." I'm like, "Huh?" So, but if I had not been there at that moment, it was difficult to manage. So you have to be careful what you choose. We weren't doing manual muscle testing, but we were doing range of motion. So they were having her do bilateral overhead range of motion like they normally would, and they realized she was uncomfortable, but it was first semester, first year, so they didn't know all those steps to take, where they really do need you around at that point. And so that was a really scary time for me, that I would say that when you go into those places, that you need to make sure that you can provide the supervision, that you need to, and choose your opportunities for the students to interact and learn that also are not,
But that's also an opportune time to bring a faculty friend with you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, partnering,
You
and
know,
sometimes
I
we
think
don't.
sometimes we don't ask our friends and colleagues for help. Hey, you wanna come to the senior center with me Thursday? You know, even if it's just to walk around and check on students and you're dealing with the harder cases, you know?
And I would take that even further, Mary, just because I think that with the new curriculum and the different sequences and the different locations, there were some embedded experiences that were shared by multiple courses in a semester that may not be there now, but I don't know that because we're busy people, I don't know that we're communicating, hey, I'm still going to the senior center, what's another course, is there an experience that we could build into foundations
Yeah, because
or
one
whatever.
time we were able to do Kinesis and foundations,
And
and so we
so
had to do
again, it's
CPM
that, it's
and
a communications,
Right.
it's an opportunity, I think,
Right.
to
that
meet,
was really cool.
two course objectives potentially.
And I don't know if that's a role for lab assistants, if the grad assistants are capable of that, but there might be certain circumstances where an upper level student might be available for helping as well. I don't know which situation, but something to think about.
Remind me again to talk about grad assistants. Good, thank
Yeah.
you, Ken. Mary, we had you down for clinical partnerships and research and that.
Yeah, just that, the two projects that I'm working on right now came to me from clinicians in the community. So I just wanted to share that, taking those projects and run with it, and people are approaching me about another one. And so just figuring out a way, and I've worked on other with Dr. Reckner, and, even though I might not have totally saw eye to eye with the philosophy there, that project was very useful for teaching our students research, and they have continued the work. Stephanie told me at the workshop that they just published another article. And I feel like somehow I think he could have done it without us, but I think we helped move their research forward faster than it would have had we not been involved in the beginning. So just putting that out there in terms of community partnerships with people needing real live research to be done in their settings, and then they give us access. That's, these hippotherapy people, I mean, I'm not a horse person, believe it or not. But this hippotherapy thing is amazing. My weekend people got 40 some odd participants. These are weekend students working. And these hippotherapy people are so into having the research done. So to try to find opportunities in clinical settings where you're gonna have access, and people who will provide that access for you as well is rewarding for not just me, but our students.
And I think you need to say that development of assessments that you have really helped with the TIDAB.
Right, yeah.
Get some assessments developed, and you've done
Right,
multiple
right.
ones.
Yeah.
And we've passed off back and forth too. I mean, one of the things that I think has worked well for that is different people at different
Well, the
times.
hippotherapy thing, I was an expansion of what Irma was
Irma
doing.
did.
Hers was more of a biomechanical tool.
And then I think the TIDAB started with, what was her name?
Tracy.
No, the student who wanted to do the vision stuff. I ended up supervising the advanced practice elective for her to
Vanessa.
begin to.
Vanessa.
No, it wasn't Vanessa. Jennifer or something. Anyway, the point is, it started as an advanced practice elective, and then it built on, then we passed it to Mary. Mary did several.
Cavallo, Jessica Cavallo.
Cavallo, thank you. So it built, and so passing back and forth too sometimes is good, but it was all real stuff. I mean, the students could see that this is a clinician who really cares about what's happening. So that's the part that makes it real, I mean, it's a real practice kind of a deal. Chrissy, authentic assessment project apparently, I don't know what you've been up to lately, but.
Well-
came up.
In 452.
And, are you talking about bringing the clients in to,
For the practical.
Yeah, for the practical, and then like a lot of times in the neuro piece, it's hard to teach neuro in
Right.
adult and older adult without letting them see that. So every time I teach that neuro section, I try to have a client come in who has suffered a stroke or had an avascular malformation rupture that presented like a stroke this last time. But just bringing those students in, or those clients in for 4 hours during their lab, so they can actually practice their transfers on those patients, so they can practice the assessments on those patients. The other thing I've done is surprise for their midterm, I bring in clients with the actual, I have an ortho, a visual, well, actually 2 orthos, a visual and a cognitively impaired patient that I bring in, and they have to draw out of a hat one of those assessments, and then it's, you pull that out, all right, Betty's yours. So they go over to Betty and they have to pull out their assessment, and they don't know if they're gonna get an ortho impairment, a cognitive or a neuro type impairment or visual, and they have to actually give them the assessment. And then when that group they're in 4 sections of the room, they're all doing their stuff simultaneously. When they leave the room, the client then actually gives me feedback, much like Kay said. The client says, I felt very comfortable with them, they did a great job, and of course I'm watching the whole time. So it's very real, it puts them on the spot, and it gives them, a real person to actually do these assessments.
And I heard about it from the students. I didn't hear about it from you. You know what I mean? That it was like the best practical assessment they ever could have. And I was wondering, on your part, how much setup did that entail?
Well, as a practitioner, I have it in my brain. I have my practice life, and then I have my school
Right.
life running simultaneously. So I start about 4 weeks before saying, hey, would you like to come to Norcross with me in about a month? I'll treat you to lunch. Come in the morning, we'll meet, we'll talk, and they're pretty agreeable to it. And then, also I think that we have a huge opportunity for using the CPL
yeah.
folks to bring into class, if we don't have an active practice environment,
Right.
to start planning ahead about 6 weeks to a month ahead, to have those people come in. Because really when you do it for test time, you really get to see, okay, who's going to do well, who's going to freak out
Right.
in real time.
So if we know of a person who has an impairment who would like to be part of your classroom, who do we tell?
Me, please.
So you
No, but
take
I would tell like Robin.
Me?
Yeah, I would tell Robin as CPL. Can I throw you out there, Robin?
Maybe there might be someone for the CPA.
Well, she
Yeah.
doesn't really need intervention. I just met her during a hospice event. She's very low vision. She's
I think-
willing to volunteer.
I think CPL is a good holding place for that.
Yeah, so
They
even
don't
if we
need
know they
services
do need
because of
treatment,
the-
or they'd be great for a demonstration of an intervention,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
a
that
demonstration
would
of
be-
evaluation, or a testing time.
Yeah.
Robin, do you mind kind of being the point person for?
We have all kind of friends.
Yeah, like like we could sort of categorize and then be able, because it's difficult when it comes time, to find people who could come in, or can you, and if you have 3 different labs, you have the same person come 3 times, can they do that, or whatever? All of that becomes more complicated.
And if we can also sort of keep a catalog of folks that, would be.
And I think over time, if we have, we may over time want to have our stable of paid teachers. I've got to do some planning on it, but we can have our stable of paid teachers that, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that-
that's $25 a class as a teacher.
yeah. So we'll have to kind of think through the budgeting on that, but I think that we, that's something that if that's what it takes to get it to happen, we'll get our stable of folks.
Right, and what
and
can
use it.
happen is one person tells another person that they know, like in Bullitt, they'll tell each other that Ann was trying to tell this other client of mine that she needs to come to CPL, and I said to Norcross, and we do Norcross, and said, oh, we can carpool, we'll come to Norcross.
So, the one I had down that Mary wanted me to talk about was my Habitat for Humanity project. I used to teach the occupational media course that is now turned into advanced OT practice. And one of my concerns is that a lot of times we don't get our folks dirty. I mean, everybody thinks OT happens in these nice clean little places, and clean little walls, and I'm not sure if folks really understand the kind of work that people do. And so we were able to engineer where we all volunteered on a Habitat for Humanity project, and I took them out there and had them do a lot of on-the-spot activity analysis and get them to sort of understand what was involved in terms of the heat and the sweat and the climbing high and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that Mary tells me, and I think is true, is that I'm very comfortable with just, and that's just the floor time thing again. It's like, I know what I want them to get out of it, and anything they do, I can ask them questions. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of the occupational analysis piece, and understanding, I try and bring in what I know might be going on at the same time, whether it's carpal tunnel kind of stuff, or back stuff, or orthopedic stuff, or head injury stuff, or sensory loss stuff, and could you do this with sensory loss, you know, all of that, so that they could experience it themselves and see it on the other end. So that was kind of
And just as a piggyback, I brought students to a ramp build.
Oh, that's funny.
That I had arranged.
You brought it to a
And,
what?
A ramp.
Ramp, you know, like I was like, I don't wanna
It's just
build
in
a
a
whole
landfill.
house, I want them to see the end product, you know. One morning, we'll have 2 groups, you know, and we'll get this ramp done, bada bing, bada boom.
Oh, yeah.
Get to the subdivision, and the homeowners association hadn't approved it. And I'm like, damn, now what do I do? These 2 students groups are here. So I was like, home eval time.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I was like, to the family, you know, we were supposed to come do a ramp, but gee, could we use this as an opportunity to do a home assessment? And they were like more than willing to, you know, so the students were like, we know the ramp thing didn't work out, but boy, did we learn a lot about doing home evals. So point being is, again, allow yourself some of that flexibility. Yeah, they didn't learn about ramp and getting dirty and all that, but they learned how to do a home eval. And then I fed that to, actually, I think I was the person who taught them in the next class where they were supposed to learn a home eval. I knew they had it already, so.
Yeah, I had my students in Chattanooga, they were filming, that home makeover show.
Oh,
in
yeah.
North Georgia, and, it was for a little boy that we all knew, because he's all over town with osteogenesis imperfecta and his family. And so they all signed up, and 3/4 of them got accepted, because there were thousands of volunteers.
Oh, wow.
And they actually were all on camera, so they
Oh,
actually
fun.
we could watch it on TV and, you know, see the adapted pool and the adapted this, that, and the other thing.
It was a neat experience.
Yeah.
Janine, I hear some cool neuro projects came out. You wanna
Oh,
talk about what you
yeah.
had them do?
The neuro project is an application project at the end of the semester where students select a topic representative of, thank you, of neuro, speaking of neuro. And so they create a product that represents whatever their topic is. Like the ear was one that a student created. And this is the most fascinating ear replication that I have ever seen, I think. And then they have to present it to their classmates using layman's terms. So no, you know, jargony neuroscience kind of stuff, but they have to present it. And so we've had people cross-stitch the brain, or we had students make a brain that would light up when they would go through the different parts of the brain. They would flip a switch and a part of the brain would light up. Really cool stuff.
But how did you, because I handed you the syllabus and I thought my projects were okay. But then you raised the bar somehow. And I did it, you know, I showed your projects to my people this summer.
Oh,
To
so
get
now
the
you're
bar-
jacking it up a little more.
I don't know that the bar was like, it seemed like Janine set this high bar for them, and what did you say to them to
Well,
get them?
I don't know, Mary. I didn't say, well, I want to set the bar higher because I really want my projects to be better than Mary's. But
Besides that,
we
what
are-
else?
That might have worked, actually.
Well, you know, I think, honestly, I think that, but this is true of you, so I don't know that this is fair. I love neuroscience, and I love partnering with student learning. And so maybe it was just my energy about
Yeah.
the possibility of them having creative freedom to do
Right.
something really cool and to do what they wanted. And so maybe it was just the energy coming from me that got them jazzed up. It could have been just the cohort was exceptionally
And
creative.
Passion that sells.
And I gotta say, Mary, I got a confession time here. I mean, y'all come up with some really great stuff, and I think that some of my most brilliant moments have come from me sitting back saying, oh crap, I don't know what to do. How would I learn this? Okay, you know, I mean, really, I've got, or my ADD kicks in, and I'm like, I gotta do something. Yeah, I mean, really,
Well,
that's,
it seems like it goes back to that exploration.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's ownership there if they're exploring something they're interested in.
Right.
And I always thought, oh, are these projects just fluff, you know, or they're nice to have in the class, but not necessary. Every course eval, that's the thing they feel like they learn the most from. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
they love digging into the application
Right.
and talking about, it's like the first clinical reasoning course, or all the professional reasoning courses. How do you take foundations and anatomy and neuro and whatever and make it connect to an actual person instead of siloing, so.
I wanted Wendy and Nancy to talk about how they did the pre-OTs this time, because, you know, we've been trying to connect with the health science and psychology pre-OTs, and there's this open house that's always like 4 seconds after the semester starts.
Right, kind of like the convocation.
And this was so cool. So would you guys share what you did this time that I thought was a great example of this?
I think the different twist was Jerry.
Yes.
Right. So Nancy and I were talking about how to make that connection with the pre-OTs to have them feel more connected with the OT community here. So the idea that we shared was having a consumer of services come and talk about occupational therapy and his or her experience. So trying to make that a little bit more real. So it turned out that this person who was able to come was someone who had used CPL services and was giving back as part of as a barter. So Jerry came to talk about his experience of having a brain event, but then also how he's recovered over the years and what his occupational therapy has helped him learn and do and be for his roles. And it was really, Nancy really knows this gentleman, so she prompted him with a lot of questioning, but he really just came out with changed roles, new identity, new occupations. I mean, it was coming out all in his responses, and it was, I think, and they asked some terrific questions of him as well.
And you both, Marvin,
Yeah.
when you were very, very
And
supportive of
you did
him.
something
and
during
helping us
assessment
build
day
roles.
with the pre-OTs. Can you maybe talk about that by bringing Nikki in?
Oh yeah.
You
That's right.
forgot.
Yeah, yeah. And then we had assessment day when the pre-OTs were there. We had a practitioner come in, and someone whom Charles knew from Northeast Georgia, and she came to talk about a Bernal alum as well.
Yeah, she's around, I think you read from.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So she came in to talk about her practice and how where her career has been since she graduated and how Bernal prepared her for that. And they were able to ask her some terrific questions as well, and she gave some good advice. So I think that those things perhaps made it a little bit more real for them, in addition to prereqs stuff.
Other things that people want to share? We just want to kind of like, you know, people do stuff.
I wanted to share a realization that I don't think is necessarily a problem, but you know, I teach evidence-based practice for one thing in the old curriculum, teaching that out just in the last year, teaching that out. And of course now with the new curriculum, we got that from that having them that mindset from the very beginning, and it's one of our 3 pillars. And I think that as an aspect, I think evidence-based, bringing the evidence, I mean, evidence-based practice is a trifold thing. It's the client situation and environment, it's the therapist's theories and experience, and it's the evidence in the literature. I think those first 2 we cover throughout all the practice courses. It's the evidence from the literature that our students aren't, I don't think, getting much of any practice with, much of any applied. I mean, I do what I can in the course, and I have them create, actually, as some of you have experienced coming to some presentations in the past years of this. Students in their thesis groups create a scenario client and create the client part of this triumvirate, and then they apply their own theoretical perspectives and their own experience, and I encourage them to talk with other OTs who work with this sort of client. And then I have them, you know, bring in the research evidence in the literature and apply it to this case. And that's always a good experience, and I think they learn a lot from doing that. I don't think it ever gets taken any further. And when I think it's very rare that on field work, they experience or are at least aware of their therapists and their CIs, you know, how they incorporate the literature, you know, how they incorporate that into their professional lives and practice. And I don't think there's necessarily much that we can do about that, but I just wanted to hold that up there in the light for a minute, to think about.
Well, I will tell you that in 310, which is now 680, for their final debate, they have to pull at least 2 peer-reviewed articles to support their type of intervention.
Mm-hmm.
But
We
to be
added
honest
that,
with you,
but-
they have not done it they do not do a great job of
Yeah.
choosing the articles.
Do you mean they bring in the article in relationship to what they targeted in their field work?
Their project is a debate. They're given a type of intervention, one of the main 3, occupation-based, purposeful activity, or preparatory methods. And they have the same client, and they have to debate and give their reasons, their rationale for why their, like, preparatory is the only way to go with this person. And so they have to choose at least 2 articles that go ahead and support, have the evidence
Right.
that this is the way to go in terms of preparatory or purposeful occupation based. And they still don't do a great job.
Of
You know,
finding
I
the
was-
literature and the kind of literature or
The
connecting?
kind of literature, they're tangential. I don't think they look far enough or keep on the topic.
Rosalie, it's funny that you should bring that up, because John and I were talking on the way up, and I was saying, you know, because I reread Wendy's chapter. in
Yes,
this
Wendy
thing.
Conster's chapter in
Yeah,
this,
which is
in
a
Barb's,
beautiful
in
chapter
John's book.
from a curricular standpoint, how to do that, and I think you were struck by that too. And I was thinking, you know, I really like the context-based thing, but I'm not sure still we're teaching the research, like, it's like we still, it sort of feels like, and we don't mean to, but that we're teaching them how to do research instead of how to use evidence in practice. Do you know what I mean?
But in our other class, first of all, I taught the media class, and I thought they did really well with the literature,
Well,
so.
but finding 2 articles that support your position is not evidence-based practice. That's not the same as looking at a bunch of stuff and saying, on the whole, this is what it says.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I do the
Yes.
same thing in foundations. I have to
You're
bring
right.
it to peer reviewed. We've worked to try and make it more real, but I'm still not sure that we're quite.
Well, we intentionally created the assignments on the curricular grid to try to do this, that all of the application, the OT courses across the lifespan need to have some little, at least small, like 2 articles, I think was the
For the
minimum we
case study
said.
assignment, is it?
Yeah, so that is in there, recognizing that this is a need.
Yeah.
I think that the textbook that we're using, for older adult, the Gillen textbook it does a great job at presenting how to pull, because he backs up everything with, you know, current articles and
Yeah.
whatnot, so, as an example, and if you're teaching from that, you have to, it just flows naturally that you would be using the evidence always to support, and a lot of times,
Yeah.
in older adult, there's a lot done that's still old school and no longer current, and so there's lots of opportunities to bring into, well, this is why we want you to change direction and not do as you might see your CIs do. You know,
Right,
there's a
right.
different way, you know.
But what I hear Barb saying is, perhaps we need to bring in a CAP or some other more synthesis,
Yeah.
even if it's an
Systematic
in-class
reviews,
activity, or
critically analyzed
something
Yeah.
where they summarize a systematic review in
Right.
the context of those practice process classes.
Because otherwise, we're training them to go find 2 peer-reviewed articles that
You're right.
support what they
And
think,
make
I
it.
don't
which
do
is
that.
exactly the problem
In
in
Yale,
practice.
they don't do that, I
I'm
give
gonna
them
say
the
something.
fidelity study, the SI, because it's
Oh, yeah.
a classic, and then
Right.
have them synthesize the article given, but
And I
not.
think,
But you know what, there's a whole bunch of systematic reviews that have already been done and are available.
Right.
And I think if I was a clinician now, I'd go to that. That
Oh, yeah,
evidence is
absolutely.
there and use that and
Absolutely.
then add on the articles. Because
Absolutely.
people have done some of that work. So Pedro is a site for that. I have a number of sites that I put into the evidence-based practice course, realizing the students are gonna get these systematic reviews and then they have to add on. And I
Right,
think
right.
that helps them capture some of the information about whatever the topic is or intervention,
Right.
and then how to add on.
Oh, I agree, systematic reviews and CATs and so forth.
One of the things, though, is that also learning that you are throwing so much at the students, and we want them to be theoretical thinkers, but at what point is it advanced practice too? Yes, we want them to read and research and understand their articles and things, but we also have a doctoral program that they're going to be advancing in too. I mean, you've got to have enough years and enough time to get to
That's true. You
the
can't put
curriculum.
everything, yeah, and that's why I say I'm not sure that this is a real
Some
problem.
of the work for you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, if they can read a cat, it's kind of expedient.
Well, that's
Well,
what I'm having to do for
and, you know,
the,
teaching them the tricks of the trade and getting them as far as like getting their feet wet. You
Right.
need to know how to do this skill, but if you do it in every class where they're only looking at the research-based practice, you don't learn sometimes just the practical skills.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm saying, I'm not sure
I know,
that there's
it's a
really anything to
dilemma.
be done about this, I'm just putting it out there. And-
Elizabeth's just been trying to say something for a while.
I'm so awkward, I'm sorry, at moving between all your documents. So
So
my
are we.
question could be very elementary. But I believe the course is OT 618, level 1, this semester, is that right, for the second year
Yes.
students? When they're out on their fieldwork one and they do a case study, right? they
For the
choose
clinical reasoning
They
seminar.
pick a person who's gonna say. Is that a time when they have to do a literature review about what they've been doing with the
No.
person?
Or find a systematic reviewer.
Is that a place where they could do an evidence review?
Part of the issue on the clinical reasoning seminar, this is a reification, okay,
Mm.
is that we don't put new stuff in. That's a
No.
place where they synthesize what they're getting everywhere else.
Yeah, no, I don't mean in the clinical reasoning class. I mean, when they're on the field work and they meet these people and they're doing things with these people.
That would have to be
There's no,
in the OT application.
Yeah,
In a
yeah.
class.
It
In a class.
feels like
There's
it's
no
weird
class.
that's a class, but it's no class, if that makes sense.
It's not a class, okay.
So they don't have truly any assignments that are connected to that class.
I see, okay.
But
that's
they,
the field work.
But I
Yeah.
like that, I do
But-
like.
I like the idea
like-
before I should go down there.
Yeah, that, but I also, and now I know we're not gonna have this any longer, is OT 500. That's a great place for them to, stick their toe in the water of being interested in looking at something while they're in practice, and the practice of gathering data and seeing how you can have evidence-based practice while you're in practice, and it doesn't have to be.
Writing a massive paper.
Exactly.
Right.
Well,
Could I make a recommendation that maybe the curriculum committee think about maybe one logical place or course where they really apply it to somebody for real? They do it in your class for real, or simulated case, but in this case, it will be a real patient that they've seen on their field work or some other experience. I do wanna add that, Tamara, somebody who you taught this summer on the OT Facebook, he posted over summer break my new favorite website, and it was the Cochrane Database.
Oh,
You know, so obviously you're having some impact on people in evidence base. So, you know, so you inspire somebody to continue. He was like, oh my gosh, this course really opened my eyes to the fact that evidence is out there. And I was like, woo, he's a third semester student, yay!
Can I ask that with that discussion of curriculum committee, that also is a discussion about how to have our thesis groups ahead and summarize data or their articles, their literature.
Susan
What
did
we've been
ask
talking
me, is
about.
there a
What I asked
worksheet
you.
or is there a
Synthesizing.
And I told
Yeah.
them to look in the appendix Rosalie told me to have them look in the appendix.
Of the evidence-based book? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, Mary Law, yeah,
Yeah.
Law McDermott has these,
Okay. Yeah.
forms in the back for
The
critiquing
critique,
articles and
yeah.
quant and qual and,
quant.
and measures, all.
So I think we have lots of good examples here, and lots more that we haven't even, I mean, we could spend more time, but it's getting to be 10:03, so here's what I suggest. Why don't we take a 5-minute bathroom break? While everybody's on their little bathroom break, I just want you to kind of reflect on what we've done today and come back and be willing to share like sort of one thing that you want to kind of chew on for yourself, for your own teaching and your own understanding of learning and your own teaching for this year, just as a way to sort of make a little bit of a psychological commitment.
We have to set a goal.
Doesn't have to be
gosh.
a goal.
Very real.
Notice that I just said it's something that you're gonna chew on, okay?
Chew on.
Well, I realize we can sit a long time since lunch. Let's take just a 5-minute, and we won't take long after that. And then
Yeah, and
everybody went
they
in
have
all.
8 very real people that are really responsible. And the leader of the program wants to co-teach with them and then turn it over to them. So it's a big deal. And then they have to take a case that, all I'm wondering
I know.
is, where is the evidence that they're gonna teach these 6 people how to pass
You were
their
describing me
driving test?
earlier, but overwhelmed, shut down.
I thought this is what I did.
It's like, yeah, that's me.
What is the
I'm
literature
there.
out there that says how you approach?
It takes a while to get me there.
I'm doing good. How was your vacation other than,
I'm gonna try and talk to her again, the teacher tomorrow, but.
I know.
So Mal settled in.
Or there's got to be literature out there on search, because search has been around for a while. And it's the Bridges Law and the Transition Initiative Law. So is there any literature out there that talks about
Yeah, it's like an
the most effective content within the search classroom to help the students in their self-determination? Just, just to say, to connect the evidence literature to what this lead teacher is asking them to do.
Well, I gotta get these posters down to
Effective? What does the literature say about it? There has to be some special literature.
Oh, yeah, and there are, sure, and there are special ed and there are.
Okay, great, yeah, just let me know, like I said, with basic, just say,
But I mean,
we
there's
can
about
look at
5
basic
different places where they can go to
site. I've got it set up for one to look at it, or the 4 of us, or 5 of us. Not to be shared with the outside, it's just a central place for us to share information. So just to have them take a look at it, and see, and we can access it.